The first rays of sunlight stretched across the horizon as I secured the last box in the back of my Amazon delivery van. My name is Michael Hayes, and for nearly 3 years, I've been making deliveries for Amazon. It wasn't the most exciting job, but it covered the bills and kept me on the move. That morning the air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp grass, and the usual chorus of birds filled the quiet neighborhood streets. Just another routine day. I glanced down at the scanner in my hand. Next stop, just a couple of minutes away. Climbing into the driver's seat, I turned up the volume on the local radio station, letting the familiar tunes keep me company. Today's route took me through Pinewood Heights, a peaceful suburban area in Pennsylvania. It was the kind of neighborhood straight out of a real estate brochure. Manicured lawns, pristine white picket fences, and of course, a Labrador barking in nearly every other yard. The first few deliveries were typical. Pull up, grab the package, scan it, drop it off, snap a quick proof of delivery photo, and move on. By the time I reached Red Maple Drive, my mind was already drifting toward what I'd grab for lunch. Parking in front of a modest blue house, I reached into the back and retrieved a small box. As I made my way to the porch, a warm voice called out from a nearby driveway. "Good morning." An elderly woman waved cheerfully as she watered her plants, the spray from her hose catching the sunlight. "Morning, ma'am." "Got a package for you," I replied, flashing a polite smile as I set the box down and quickly took a photo. Moments like these were what made the job feel less robotic. Small interactions, a smile here, a friendly wave there. They broke up the monotony. Jogging back to my van, I climbed in and entered the next address into the system. It was about 15 minutes away, just enough time to let my mind drift. Pulling onto the main road, I started thinking about my plans for the evening. That's when everything changed. I was halfway to the next stop when I felt it, a cold, unforgiving blade pressing against the side of my neck. My entire body locked up, my fingers clenched tighter around the steering wheel. Someone was behind me. "Don't scream. Don't move. Just drive." A deep voice hissed close to my ear. My pulse pounded so hard I could barely think. How the hell had someone gotten into the van? Had I left it unlocked at my last stop? "Hey man, take whatever you want," I stammered, my voice barely steady. "The cash box is in the glove compartment." "Shut up," he snapped, pressing the knife harder into my skin. A sharp sting told me he wasn't bluffing. "I don't care about your cash, just drive. I'll tell you where to go." I swallowed hard, my throat dry as sandpaper. Hands shaking, I did as he ordered, keeping the van moving. A quick glance in the rearview mirror gave me a glimpse of him. Late 30s, maybe early 40s, a dark hoodie pulled low over his face. His eyes were sharp, wild, filled with something far worse than desperation. "Don't even think about looking at me," he growled. His grip tightened on my collar, yanking my head forward. "Eyes on the road." He directed me off the main street, deeper into the industrial part of town. The farther we went, the more the streets emptied, lined with crumbling warehouses and rusted-out factories that hadn't seen life in decades. My mind raced, searching for a way out of this. "You don't need to do this, man," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's just packages back there. Nothing worth going to jail over." He let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "You think I care about jail? Just keep driving." Eventually, he ordered me to pull into the lot of an abandoned warehouse. The place was falling apart, windows shattered, graffiti scrawled across the crumbling brick walls, weeds bursting through cracks in the pavement. "Park near the loading dock," he commanded. I did as I was told, but every nerve in my body screamed for an escape. "And turn off the engine. Now," he barked, motioning with the knife. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling as I obeyed, turning the key and killing the van's rumbling engine. Slowly, I raised my hands and stepped out, my pulse pounding so hard it felt like my ribs might crack under the pressure. He kept the blade trained on me, his gaze locked onto mine with a chilling intensity. Without a word, he rummaged through my pockets, yanking out my phone and wallet with practiced ease. His fingers moved with the precision of someone who had done this before. My stomach twisted as he took a step back, gripping the knife a little tighter. "Get on your knees," he ordered, a wicked grin creeping across his face. "This will be over quick." Panic shot through me like ice in my veins. My breath came in short, shallow bursts. "Please, man," I begged, my voice raw with desperation. "You've got what you want. Just let me go." He tilted his head, pretending to consider my words before smirking. "You're right. I do have what I want." Before I could process what was happening, he spun on his heel, climbed into the driver's seat of my van, and slammed the door shut. The engine roared back to life, and in seconds he sped off, tires screeching against the cracked pavement. I knelt there in the middle of that desolate lot, frozen. My van, my belongings, my livelihood, gone. For what felt like an eternity, I stayed there, too stunned to move, my mind struggling to catch up. My hands shook so violently that when I finally forced myself to stand, my legs nearly buckled beneath me. Every step felt like wading through quicksand, but I kept going. At the edge of the lot, I spotted a narrow dirt path leading to the main road. I had no idea how long I walked, but my legs were heavy, my breath unsteady, my heart still slamming against my ribs. Then, in the distance, a car appeared. A rusty old sedan rumbled toward me, its engine coughing as it approached. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me not to trust anyone after what had just happened. But what choice did I have? Stepping onto the road, I waved my arms. The sedan slowed and pulled over. The driver, a middle-aged man with tired but kind eyes, rolled down his window. "You okay, man?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. I tried to respond, but the words caught in my throat. When I finally spoke, my voice cracked. "Number I got robbed. He took everything, my van, my phone, my wallet." "Shit," the guy muttered, shaking his head. "How the hell?" He fumbled for his phone. "I'll call the cops." The police arrived about 20 minutes later. I gave my statement recounting every terrifying detail. The man, the knife, the van. They asked me to describe him, his voice, his build, anything that might help. They assured me they'd do everything possible to recover the vehicle. I wasn't holding my breath. The rest of the day blurred together. More questions, more paperwork. I borrowed a phone at the station to call my manager. She was sympathetic but understandably frustrated. The van was company property after all. For weeks after, the fear clung to me like a second skin. Every time I climbed behind the wheel of another delivery van, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, flinching at shadows, locking the doors religiously, even if I was only stepping out for a second. Eventually, the police found the van abandoned on a deserted back road. Most of the packages were gone, but they recovered my phone and wallet. It felt like a hollow victory. The whole experience changed me. I became more cautious, more aware of every person, every movement around me. But no matter how much time passed, I couldn't forget the sound of his voice, the press of that cold blade against my skin. Even now, whenever I step into a delivery van, one thought lingers in the back of my mind. Will today be the day it happens again? It was another blistering afternoon in late July, and I had just finished loading up my delivery van for the day. My name's Ethan Roberts, and I'd been working as an Amazon delivery driver for about 8 months. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid the bills, and I enjoyed the solitude of the road. Besides, I took pride in my efficiency. I could get through 150 packages in a day without a single missed delivery. That day, I was assigned to a quiet suburban neighborhood on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. It was a nice area, big houses, neatly trimmed lawns, and streets so silent you could hear the hum of cicadas from a mile away. The kind of place where nothing ever really seemed to happen. Around 3 p.m., I pulled up to a house on Willow Creek Drive. It was a typical 2-story home, painted a fading shade of pale blue, with a white picket fence. The yard was immaculate, and a few children's toys were scattered on the lawn. One of those houses that just looked picture perfect. I grabbed the package from the back of my van, a medium-sized box with Fragile stamped on the side, and made my way to the front door. But as I approached, something felt off. The door was slightly ajar, not enough to seem outright alarming, but enough to catch my attention. I paused, glancing around the street. It was empty. No cars passing by, no kids playing outside. Just me, the heat, and that slightly open door. Maybe they're home, I muttered to myself. I knocked lightly, then called out, "Amazon delivery!" "Anybody home?" No answer. A faint noise drifted out from inside the house, a rhythmic thumping sound, almost like something heavy being dragged across the floor. My instincts screamed at me to leave the package and walk away, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped closer to the door and peered inside. The living room was dimly lit, and at first glance everything seemed normal: a couch, a coffee table, family photos on the walls. But then I saw it. Someone was standing in the middle of the room, their back turned to me. They were dressed in a black hoodie and jeans, gripping what looked like a crowbar in their hands. I froze. "Hey," I called out hesitantly, my voice unsteady. "I'm just here to drop off a package." The figure spun around so fast it made my heart lurch. They were wearing a ski mask and their eyes locked onto mine, cold, angry, and full of menace. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then they slowly raised the crowbar, pointing it at me like a warning. "Get out of here," they snarled, their voice low and threatening. "This isn't your business." A chill shot through me. Okay, I stammered, raising my hands in surrender. "I'm leaving." I took a step back, then another, but just as I reached the porch steps, I heard rapid footsteps behind me. Before I could react, the figure lunged, swinging the crowbar with full force. I ducked. The metal smashed into the wooden doorframe, splintering it. "Jesus Christ!" I yelled, stumbling down the steps. I hit the ground hard, but adrenaline kicked in and I scrambled to my feet. The masked figure was already coming at me again, the crowbar raised high above their head. I bolted toward my van, my heart hammering in my chest. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. "Get back here!" the person shouted, their footsteps hammering the pavement behind me. I threw myself into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut just as they reached the van. They started pounding on the window with the crowbar, their masked face inches from mine. "I said, get out!" they screamed, their voice muffled but furious. My hands were shaking so badly it took me a second to jam the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I shoved the van into drive, peeling out of the driveway so fast my tires screeched. In the rearview mirror, I saw the figure standing in the middle of the street, still clutching the crowbar. Then, to my horror, they turned and calmly walked back into the house. I drove a few blocks away and pulled over, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My heart was still racing, my breaths coming in short, shallow gasps. Okay, think, I muttered to myself. My phone was in the cup holder. With trembling fingers, I grabbed it and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? A calm voice answered. I think someone broke into a house on Willow Creek Drive, I stammered, struggling to get the words out. They're armed. They tried to attack me. The operator asked for the address and a description of the suspect. I gave them everything I could remember: the black hoodie, the ski mask, the crowbar. Within minutes, I heard the distant wail of sirens. I stayed parked where I was, watching as 2 police cruisers sped past me and turned onto Willow Creek Drive. Every part of me wanted to drive away, to get as far from that house as possible, but I knew I needed to stay in case the cops had questions. So I waited. My eyes locked on the rearview mirror. About 10 minutes later, I saw the police escorting the figure out of the house in handcuffs. Even from a distance, I could see the defiance in their posture, the way they walked with their head held high, as if they weren't the least bit sorry for what they'd done. A police officer approached my van and tapped on the window. I rolled it down, trying to steady my breathing. "Are you the one who called this in?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Is everyone okay?" The officer nodded. "No one was home, thankfully. Looks like they were trying to rob the place. Thanks to your quick thinking, we were able to catch them in the act." I nodded, but I didn't feel relieved. If anything, I felt even more shaken. The thought of what could have happened, how close I'd come to getting seriously hurt, kept replaying in my mind. "You did the right thing," the officer said, giving me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Not everyone would have had the guts to call this in. I forced a weak smile. "Thanks." The rest of my route that day was a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about the encounter, the way the figure's eyes burned with anger, the sound of the crowbar smashing into the door frame, the sheer panic that had gripped me as I ran for my life. For days afterward, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, that the person I'd seen might come looking for me. I started being extra cautious on my deliveries, double-checking addresses, scanning my surroundings, staying on high alert for anything unusual. Every time I knocked on a door, I braced myself, half expecting something or someone dangerous to be waiting on the other side. It's been months now, and I'm still trying to put that day behind me. People always assume delivery drivers have an easy job, but they don't see the risks we face. They don't know what it's like to stand on someone's porch, your heart racing, wondering if you're about to step into a nightmare. All I know is, I'll never look at an open door the same way again. It was a quiet Thursday night at the Amazon Ghost Store on Jefferson Street, the kind of night that seemed to stretch endlessly. I glanced at the clock on my register. 1:52 a.m., just over 3 hours left in my shift. The fluorescent lights above hummed faintly, casting a stark, almost clinical glow over the empty aisles. Aside from the occasional beep of my scanner, the store was eerily silent. "Jess, you holding up?" came a voice from the stockroom. It was Aaron, my coworker, restocking the electronics section. His voice cut through the oppressive quiet. "Barely," I called back. "Another night of staring at nothing." Aaron chuckled. "At least we're getting paid for it. Think of all the books and snacks flying off the shelves while we stand here, bored out of our minds." I smirked but didn't reply. The late-night shifts came with an extra $2 an hour, but lately, I was starting to wonder if they were even worth it. I leaned against my counter, letting my gaze drift over the endless rows of smart displays and self-checkout kiosks. That's when I noticed it, a crumpled receipt wedged into the corner of my station. I frowned. I had cleaned this counter barely an hour ago. Curious, I picked it up. The paper felt wrong. It was oddly brittle, as if it had been sitting there for decades. The text was faint, but still readable. Portable cassette player, $25.99. Polaroid film roll, $88.50. Pack of Marlboro Reds, $33.25. Total, $37.75. Date, October 15th, 2002. Time 3:07 a.m. I stared at the slip in confusion. The items listed were strange. None of these had ever been sold in our store. In fact, I doubted Amazon had ever carried cassette players or cigarettes. "Aaron," I called, holding up the receipt. "Did you leave this here?" He poked his head around the corner, a box of wireless chargers balanced in his hands. "What are you talking about?" "This receipt. It's from 2002. Aaron blinked, then grinned. "Jess, I was 4 in 2002. Pretty sure I didn't leave it." He chuckled and disappeared back into the stockroom. I shoved the receipt into my pocket, shaking my head. Probably just some prank by the morning shift crew. But something about it unsettled me, like an itch I couldn't quite scratch. At 2:30 a.m., the automatic doors hissed open. A man in his mid-40s walked in, wearing a tattered coat and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. His movements were odd, jerky, like he was struggling to control his own limbs. "Welcome to Amazon Go," I said, forcing a polite smile. The man didn't respond. He just shuffled past me, muttering under his breath. I couldn't make out the words, but something about them sent an icy chill down my spine. Minutes later, he reappeared at the self-checkout kiosk, holding a portable cassette player. the same item listed on the receipt. My stomach twisted. That wasn't possible. We didn't stock cassette players. As he approached the scanner, the screen glitched. Lines of text flickered across it, too fast to read. Then the screen froze, displaying a single message. "You're trapped too." "What the hell?" I muttered. The man didn't react. He placed the cassette player on the counter, his hands trembling. "They never let me leave," he whispered, his voice raw and hollow. "Excuse me?" I asked, but he just turned and walked away, disappearing through the automatic doors, swallowed by the dark street outside. By the time 3 a.m. rolled around, I was on edge. The store felt different. The air heavier. Aaron had gone completely silent, unusual for him. "Aaron?" I called. No answer. Uneasy, I made my way toward the back office, hoping to find him there. The room was cramped, filled with the stale scent of coffee and cardboard. I opened a random drawer to distract myself, only to freeze. Tucked beneath a stack of old receipts was something strange. A yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline sent a shiver down my spine. "Tragedy at Amazon store. 5 dead in overnight fire." The article detailed a fire that had broken out in this very store back in October 2002. 5 customers and 1 employee trapped inside when the fire suppression system failed. My hands shook as I read further. Witnesses claimed to have heard screams long after the fire was extinguished. The cause of the fire? Unknown. I slammed the drawer shut, pulse hammering. I reached for my phone, desperate to call Aaron. No signal. Then I felt it. A faint warmth in my pocket. I pulled out the receipt. It was glowing. New text had appeared. "He burned us. Justice must be served." At 3:07 a.m., the store lights flickered. The hum of the freezers grew louder, like a low growl. I turned toward the aisles and froze. They were there. Shadowy figures moved through the store, their forms distorted, like reflections in a shattered mirror. A man in a burnt suit stood near the electronics section, his face a charred ruin. A little girl with singed hair skipped down the snack aisle, her eerie laughter echoing unnaturally. I stumbled backward, my breath sharp. "Aaron!" I screamed. No response. I ran toward the stockroom, desperate. Aaron's vest lay crumpled on the floor, but he was gone. On the wall, scrawled in blackened ash, were the words, "You can't leave either." Panic surged through me. I turned to flee, but the shadows blocked my path. One stepped forward, a woman with charred skin and empty hollow eye sockets. "You must expose him," she rasped, "or join us." Before I could speak, a vision flooded my mind. I saw him, Richard, the night manager in 2002. I watched, helpless, as he poured gasoline near the stockroom, lit a match, walked away, leaving them to burn. I gasped as the memory vanished. Richard was my uncle. He had always told me the fire was an accident. I never suspected the truth. The spirits pressed closer, their cold hands grazing my arms. "Tell the world," they whispered, "or share our fate." I grabbed the store's logbook, Richard's own entries detailing his plan, and bolted for the exit. The spirits parted, letting me pass. As I burst through the doors, the world around me shifted. The air grew thick with smoke. Flames roared. I wasn't in 2025 anymore. I was in October 2002, watching the store burn. Then, darkness. I woke up in my apartment the next morning, drenched in sweat. The receipt? Gone. But my arms were covered in scars that hadn't been there before. I quit my job at Amazon Go that same day. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear it. The faint hum of the freezers, and the whispers of those who never made it out. My name is Kyle Monroe, and I've been an Amazon delivery driver for about 3 years. In that time, I've seen it all. Nosy neighbors peeking through curtains, kids trying to swipe packages before their parents get home, and even the occasional dog chasing me halfway down the block. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what happened on that blistering summer afternoon in Riverview. a quiet suburb just outside Cleveland. It was a Tuesday, just past noon, and the sun was beating down relentlessly. My delivery route was neatly arranged by the app, and my van was packed to the brim. I was on my second-to-last stop of the day, already thinking about grabbing an ice-cold drink on my way back to the warehouse. The address led me to a typical suburban house, cream-colored siding, a neatly trimmed lawn, and a swing set swaying slightly in the backyard, the kind of home you'd see in a picture-perfect TV commercial. Pulling up to the driveway, I grabbed a medium-sized package from the back of my van and double-checked the address. It matched. As I made my way up the walkway, I noticed something odd. The front door was slightly ajar. Not a huge red flag. Plenty of people forget to close their doors properly. Still, a strange feeling settled in my gut. I hesitated for a moment, debating whether to knock or just leave the package by the door. "Hello? Delivery for Mr. and Mrs. Rains," I called out, my voice carrying through the still air. Silence. No movement inside. Just as I was about to set the package down and walk away, the door creaked open, slowly, eerily. A man stood in the doorway, mid-40s, average build, graying hair, and a face so stone-cold it looked like it hadn't cracked a smile in years. But that wasn't what made my breath hitch. It was the gun in his hand, pointed straight at me. "Get inside," he barked, his voice sharp, commanding. My heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and run, but the way his eyes locked onto mine told me he wasn't bluffing. He jerked the gun impatiently. "All right, man, take it easy," I stammered, raising my hand slowly. "You don't have to do this." "Shut up and move," he snapped, stepping aside just enough for me to enter. The moment I stepped through, the door slammed shut behind me. He led me down a dimly lit hallway, the air growing musty as we descended into the basement. A damp, stale smell clung to the air, and my stomach twisted at the sight of a single wooden chair surrounded by scattered tools and piles of clutter. Without warning, he shoved me down onto the chair and quickly tied my wrists and ankles with rough rope. His movements were rushed but methodical, like he'd done this before. "Stay quiet," he warned, his voice low but with an unmistakable threat beneath it. "You make a sound and this won't end well for you." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Look, man, if it's money you want, I don't have much. My wallet's in the van." He didn't even acknowledge my words, muttering something under his breath as he yanked on the ropes, making sure they were tight. Satisfied, he turned and climbed back up the stairs without another word. Then I heard it, the faint rumble of my van's engine starting. "What the hell?" I whispered to myself, realization dawning. He was stealing my van. The second I was sure he was gone, I started testing the ropes. They were tight, biting into my skin. But I remembered a trick my brother, an Army vet, had once taught me. If you flex and relax your muscles quickly, sometimes you can loosen a knot just enough. It wasn't easy. The rope scraped against my skin as I strained, my muscles burning with effort. Minutes stretched into what felt like forever, but finally, I felt the bonds on my wrists start to give. With one last desperate twist, my hands came free. Wasting no time, I untied my legs and shot up from the chair, my heart pounding. The basement door was locked. No way out that way. My eyes darted to the small window in the corner. It was tiny, barely big enough, but it was my only shot. Grabbing a rusty wrench from the nearby workbench, I took a deep breath and smashed the glass. The sharp crack echoed through the basement, and I winced, hoping no one outside had heard. I used my sleeve to clear the jagged edges, then hoisted myself up. My shoulders barely fit, and the broken glass scraped my arms, but I kept pushing forward. Then I heard it, the creak of the front door opening upstairs. "Shit," I muttered, panic flooding my veins. Heavy footsteps echoed above me. He was back. I shoved myself harder, wiggling desperately through the narrow frame. Just as my head and shoulders made it out, I felt it, a hand clamping around my ankle, strong and unyielding. "Where the hell do you think you're going?" he growled, his voice seething with fury. I kicked back with everything I had, my foot connecting with his arm. He grunted but didn't let go. I kicked again, higher this time, and my heel struck him square in the face. With a pained groan, he loosened his grip. That was all I needed. With one final frantic push, I tumbled out of the window, hitting the grass hard. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop. I scrambled to my feet and bolted down the street, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I didn't stop running until I was at least a block away. Yanking my phone from my pocket, I fumbled with it, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. 911. What's your emergency? There's a guy with a gun. He tied me up in his basement and stole my van. I gasped, barely able to catch my breath. I gave them the address and stayed on the line, every second stretching into eternity, until I finally saw the flashing lights of a patrol car racing toward me. The police arrived within minutes. I led them back to the house, my pulse still hammering in my ears. But by the time we got there, the man was gone. My van was found abandoned a few miles away, the packages inside completely untouched. It was like he had vanished into thin air. Vanished into thin air. The police launched an investigation, but as far as I know, they never caught him. For weeks, I couldn't shake the nightmares. Reliving that terrifying day over and over in my head, every detail burned into my memory. The creak of the door, the cold weight of the gun in his hand, the sheer panic of trying to escape. I still deliver packages, but I'm not the same. I'm more cautious now, always checking my surroundings, always trusting my gut. People assume being a delivery driver is an easy routine job, but they don't see the risks we take, the unpredictable dangers hiding in plain sight. That day in Riverview changed me. It was a harsh reminder that danger doesn't always come with a warning. Sometimes it's waiting behind an ordinary door, in an ordinary neighborhood, on an ordinary Tuesday. And in those moments, survival comes down to quick thinking, instinct, and just a little bit of luck. Amazon wasn't just a job, it was my lifeline. I worked the graveyard shift at the massive Amazon warehouse in Bentonville, Arkansas. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept my 10-year-old daughter Sophia and me afloat. As a single mom, my life revolved around making ends meet, even if it meant sacrificing sleep and sanity. Sophia's dad walked out when she was just a baby, leaving me to pick up the pieces and build a life for us. It wasn't easy, but I managed. My shift started at 11 p.m. and ended at 8 a.m. By midnight, the warehouse was alive with the hum of conveyor belts, the beeping of forklifts, and the occasional shout from a coworker. The place was massive, like a city made of shelves stretching endlessly in every direction. Nights were quieter, though most of the chaos came from our team scrambling to pack and ship the constant flood of orders. That night was bitterly cold, the kind of chill that seeped into your bones. The warehouse heaters weren't helping much, so I kept my hoodie pulled tight as I scanned and stacked boxes. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the endless rows of shelves. Just another night. Or so I thought. Around 1 a.m., I noticed a man lingering in one of the aisles near me. He wasn't wearing a reflective vest or any standard gear, which was strange. Everyone on shift was required to. He looked scruffy, with messy hair, a beard, and a dark hoodie. At first, I figured he was from another team or maybe a delivery driver who'd wandered in, but something about him felt off. He wasn't moving like the rest of us. While we were busy scanning items and loading carts, he just stood there, watching. I tried to brush it off, telling myself he was probably lost or waiting for someone. But as the minutes passed, he didn't leave. Worse, his gaze never left me. "Can I help you with something?" I finally asked, keeping my voice casual but firm. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing as if studying me. Then he smiled, a slow, unsettling grin that sent a shiver down my spine. "No," he finally said, his voice low and raspy. "Just looking." I forced a smile and turned back to my work, my hands trembling as I scanned another package. My heart pounded, but I told myself not to overreact. People acted strangely sometimes, especially on night shifts. Maybe he was harmless. Maybe. But he didn't leave. Every time I glanced up, he was there, lurking just out of reach, always watching. I moved to another aisle, hoping to lose him in the maze of shelves, but he followed, not immediately. He waited a few minutes each time like he didn't want to be obvious, but I knew. I could feel his presence, hear the faint shuffle of his boots on the concrete floor. By 2:30 a.m., my nerves were shot. I found my coworker Devin near the loading dock and pulled him aside. "Hey," I whispered, glancing over my shoulder. "There's this guy. He's been following me around." Devin frowned, his brows knitting together. "What guy? Someone from our shift?" "I don't think so. He's not wearing a vest and I've never seen him before." Devin scanned the area but didn't spot anyone. "Want me to walk you to the supervisor's office? We can report it." I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to make a scene or blow things out of proportion. But the other part, the part that couldn't shake the image of that eerie grin, knew I needed backup. "Yeah," I finally said. "Let's go." We made our way to the office, but the supervisor, Mark, was nowhere to be found. Typical. Devin offered to stick around, but I insisted I'd be fine. He nodded reluctantly and headed back to his section. I tried to focus on my work, keeping my head down and staying near others, but the unease never left me. Then, just after 3 a.m., I found a note. It was tucked into one of the bins I was unloading, a small, folded piece of paper with my name scrawled on the front. My hands trembled as I opened it. The message was short, but it hit me like a gut punch. "You can't hide forever. I'll see you soon." My breath caught and I dropped the note like it was burning my fingers. How did he know my name? A wave of nausea rolled through me as my mind raced to one terrifying thought. Sophia. She was sleeping peacefully at home. What if he knew about her too? I didn't hesitate. I ran straight back to Devin. Practically shaking, I shoved the note at Devin. "He left me a note," I said, my voice unsteady. Devin read it, his expression darkening. "That's it, we're calling security." The warehouse security team wasn't exactly the FBI, but they took it seriously. They searched the entire building, checking every aisle and exit, but the man was gone. It was like he had vanished into thin air. I finished my shift in a daze, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. When I got to my car, I checked the back seat, twice, before getting in and locking the doors. The drive home was a blur, my eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds, expecting to see him. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I rushed inside, straight to Sophia's room. She was sound asleep, her favorite stuffed bunny clutched in her arms. Relief flooded through me, but it didn't last. On the kitchen counter, right next to my keys, was another note. "Nice house. Cute kid. See you soon." I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone and called the police, my voice shaking as I explained everything. They sent an officer to take my statement and promised to increase patrols in my neighborhood. But the fear didn't go away. Every shadow outside my window felt like him. Every creak in the house sounded like a threat. I never went back to the warehouse after that. I couldn't. The thought of seeing him again, or worse, putting Sophia in danger, was too much. I found another job, one that let me work from home. But the paranoia never left. To this day, I triple-check every lock, every window, and every time I see a man in a dark hoodie, my heart skips a beat. Because I know he's still out there, watching, waiting,